Welcome to Champion Minded, the podcast for those who aim for excellence, not only in the sports arena, but in life. My name is Alistair McCaw, author, speaker, mindset and performance coach. And my goal is to help you unleash your unlimited potential and provide you with the tools to achieve greatness. Are you ready to become champion minded? Then let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Champion Minded podcast, or welcome back to it. I'm Alistair McCaw. In this episode of What It Takes, I have the former head coach of the UCLA Gymnastics team from 1991 to 2019. That's 28 years as the head coach. She led them to 7 national championship titles, NCAA titles. She achieved the Conference Coach of the Year, was the 2018 West Region Coach of the Year, and the Pac-12 Gymnastics Coach of the Century. My guest in today's show is Valorie Kondos. Now guys, I was super excited to get this one on, and regardless if you like gymnastics or not, you are going to learn a ton from Miss Val, as she's known. She has an incredible wealth of experience, 36 years at UCLA, 28 years, as I mentioned, as the head coach. She is a bundle of energy, a bundle of knowledge and information. You can just hear the passion in her voice. I know you guys are going to enjoy this conversation with her. We get to talk about a whole lot of things. We talk about how she defines success, what she'd look for in recruiting athletes, who inspires her. We also talk about her being mentored by Coach Wooden, the one and only UCLA basketball legendary coach. We talk about culture, how she built her culture within the UCLA gymnastics program. She also has some advice for coaches out there as well. I also asked her how she sees pressure, how she sees failure, how she sees nerves, and there was some pretty interesting answers to those 3 questions there as well. She also explains how she got into coaching, which is actually pretty interesting, and that was actually the very first question of this episode. And of course, she has a book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. Guys, I know you'll enjoy this one. I always appreciate your feedback. This is Valorie Kondos. I mean, what's most incredible about your career? You know, you mentioned there that you didn't actually come from a gymnastics background, either in competing or coaching. In fact, you came from a ballet background. So how did you end up coaching and becoming one of the most successful college gymnastic coaches ever?
Well, first of all, you can't win without talent. And so I was very blessed to be at a school like UCLA that was able to recruit some of the best talent in the world. And second of all, I feel that we were able to recruit really the top gymnasts in the country and in the world, because I really do care about them first and foremost as human beings, and then as athletes. They're not just commodities that could help me win another national championship. They were humans, 18 to 22-year-old young women that I just felt was such a privilege to have in my life. And I made a conscientious shift early on in my head coaching career that I just had to stop and figure out why was I going to coach, because I knew nothing about it. I didn't know anything about what a healthy athletic culture would look like, a team culture. I didn't know anything. And so I just thought, why am I going to be coaching? And it was really clear to me. I love athletics. I love gymnastics. And I absolutely believe that sport is the greatest masterclass in learning really tough life lessons that help you become a champion in life. And so my goal was to help the young women, student athletes that came onto our team, become champions in life through the sport of gymnastics.
Tell us a little bit about your coaching, because obviously you came in cold, so to say, into the coaching industry. Where did you learn, first of all, how to coach? Who were some of your influences or mentors along the journey?
Well, quite honestly, when I first started coaching, the world of athletics, not just gymnastics, but I think the whole world of athletics, I think the paradigm of what a coach was like was this profile of someone who was extremely dogmatic, black and white, a dictator, very, very strong personality of my way or the highway, basically. And in the sport of gymnastics, this is a really weird conundrum because while you want children to be able to enjoy the process and definitely to find joy in the process, in a sport like gymnastics, where if you miss a foot on balance beam, you can get seriously injured. And so teaching young kids at the sport of gymnastics, they're really, you've got to err on the side of being more rigid with them than just having fun. And it's not recess, because they need to learn, young children need to learn how to focus for a substantial period of time in our sport, otherwise they get injured. And then once they put in their 10,000 hours or so, then they come to college, and then you can, I felt, lighten up a little bit, because then they know how to have fun, dancing, hanging out with their friends, and then that quickly turn on the focus and be ready to hit a routine. But that's something that they learned growing up. So I'm sorry, I got off track with your question about how did I learn to coach, but I started by mimicking other head coaches. And I started by just being this bullish, in-your-face dictator, my the way or the highway. And it was horrible. I was horrible. The team was horrible. They didn't have any faith or trust in me, and I didn't have any faith or trust in myself, to be honest with you. And it wasn't until I switched my thinking from I'm here to coach to win national championships to I'm here to coach to develop champions in life through sport. And when I made that shift, then coaching the human being and motivating the human being that is the athlete took on a whole different approach. And that's where I became more compassionate and empathetic and really listened to them instead of just barking orders at them.
Valerie, where did it change for you? Because, I can relate. I was brought up in South Africa during the 80s and 90s, and we were brought up in a very much autocratic dictatorship type of schooling system. Do as I say, don't question. It was there was the pros from it, of course, because it's given me a lot of discipline in my life. But I've found in my coaching career, I can't coach the way I was coached. I had to, 15, 20 years ago, I had to change my style. Otherwise, I realized I'm not going to have many clients. I'm not going to have many people coming to me because nobody's relating to this style of, like you said, barking orders, for example. So I had to evolve and change myself to obviously adapt. But where did it change for you? Where did the penny drop, so to say?
The penny dropped, so to say. I've never heard that expression, but I like it.
British.
A few years into my head coaching career, the entire team asked me for a team meeting. And I thought, great, I love team meetings. We can talk. This will be great. And for 2 solid hours, they told me how my coaching style was hurtful and demeaning. And I was shocked because my intentions were never to be hurtful or demeaning or bullish or anything like that. My intentions were to help them be accountable to what was going to make them great. And they said, you know what, we don't mind tough coaching. We don't mind tough love. But my sarcasm, I had a very sarcastic wit. My sarcasm, as they said, was personal and demeaning. And I was like, whoa, okay, that crossed the line. Because I do believe that coaches need to be tough and they need to hold athletes accountable. When you think about why you have the only reason a person needs a coach in life is to help them do things that they can't do on their own. So there needs to be tough accountability. But once it crossed over to being personal, then that's when I was like, okay, this is not good. This is not the type of coach I want to be. And I got to figure out how to change or quit or go do something else.
Valerie, I can totally relate because, I was brought up with those type of coaches as well, sarcasm, and I coached like that as well and then realized it wasn't going to be work. But interesting story is that I consult to certain colleges and different sports on team culture. And having one-on-one meetings with the athletes, they, 80% of them, there was a few issues going on. I'm not obviously going to name the school, but there was a few issues going on with the coach. They said, we love him. He cares for us. We know that. He's a good coach. However, we just can't stand his sarcasm. And and as you just mentioned there, it's personal. So it is a massive, massive thing where we might think it's funny.
Right. Right. But think about it. If you're coaching from a place of sarcasm, then you're coaching from your ego.
True.
You're not being sarcastic because you think it's going to help them learn any better. You're coaching because you think it's funny. It's your ego coming out.
Yeah, I think it's such a difficult one. And I'm glad we've gone on to that point because I did a survey with 118 college athletes on the top 3 things they look for in a coach. And I gave them a list of 10 things. It could be they had experience in the sport or knowledge or whatever. And one of the top 3 was humor, sense of humor. I think it's one of the most underestimated skills in coaching, but there's such a fine line between humor and sarcasm. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
Because we think it's funny, but they don't, for example.
Right. Yeah. And one of my athletes explained it to me very well. I remember it just hitting home when she said, Miss Val, on any given day, if we all showed up fully rested, feeling great, not injured, not sick, life is just great, then, yeah, your humor and your sarcasm would be funny and we could handle it. But there's not going to be any day that the entire team is going to show up all feeling fabulous. And they said, on any given day, one of us, 2 of us, the majority of us are going to be tired. We've got midterms, we've got family issues, we've got boyfriend-girlfriend issues, we've got whatever. Something's going on. And all we want to do is come into the gym and have the gym be a safe space where we can learn and train and grow together as a team and, train really hard, but not have to deal with your sarcasm. And I was like, okay, point taken. And I fully agree with you.
How many athletes would you have on a team on any given season?
We'd have anywhere from 18 to 22.
Okay, so obviously, and you've spoken about this before, about the importance of relationships. How was it possible to have a connection with so many athletes, like 18 to 22? That's a lot of athletes to connect with, if I can put it that way. How did you go about with connecting and understanding your athletes more on an individual basis?
Well, any relationship takes time. And it takes time because you got to develop trust. And so a few things. One is I had individual meetings quite often with them.
I love that.
2 is I made a commitment to myself that every day I was going to connect with every single student athlete on the team. Even it was just going up to them and patting them on the back and saying, "How's your day going?" And then listening to their response. I wanted them to know that I knew and valued that they were there. And so, obviously I have, in any relationship, any coach has stronger relationships with some of the athletes than he or she does with other athletes. And I've had quite a few athletes over the years tell me they wish they had a closer relationship with me when they were there. But what they don't understand is, like, take Caitlin Ohashi and I. We have an unbelievably close relationship. Well, it wasn't me seeking that relationship out. It was the student athlete. And so the athletes that I have had the strongest relationships with and still have the strongest relationships are the ones that sought me out, the ones that stopped by my office just to check in and say hi and not even talk about gymnastics. And I think being able to develop that relationship outside of the gym was super, super valuable in building their trust and in getting buy-in. So when I ask them to do something, you know, I'm a firm believer in explaining yourself as much as possible to people, because what people don't know about you, they'll make up. But the times that I didn't have time to explain. When you develop that trust, then the times that I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're doing this. Let's go, move. Then you've already built the trust. And they know that I wouldn't be asking them to do something unless it was fully vetted and I fully believed in it.
Now, we believe that a coach has to have a certain amount of authority and a certain amount of influence. If I could push you for a percentage on authority and influence, because authority is very much sounds like an autocratic dictatorship, but you still have to be in charge. There still has to be the coach, the leader, the person who makes the decision at the end of the day. But influence, of course, is very important as well. How would you go about balancing those two? As in, you could have maybe too much authority and less influence, for example. Does that make sense?
Almost. Just a little bit more to me. I want to know where you're coming from, how you are describing influence, I guess.
Well, I think influence, obviously, to make an influence, you've got to have impact, and then you've got to obviously have a relationship. But I think, again, it gets to that difficulty of going over the line of being too friendly, and a lot of coaches can make that mistake as well, where you lose respect of the athlete because now you've become their friend. And we see that sometimes happen with younger coaches because they want to be liked, they want to be straight off the bat, and that's one of the mistakes they make. So I don't know where I'm exactly going on that question, but let's put it this way: what advice would you give young coaches? And I've completely 360 the question here. What advice would you give young coaches coming into coaching on how they would lay the foundations, for example?
Okay, so I do totally agree with you that I as a coach, I don't care if I'm their friend at all. And even when sometimes the girls will say, Miss Val was my mom, she was my friend, she's like that, it kind of makes me cringe. It's like, no, I want to be your mentor. I'll be a teacher. But, friend, I wouldn't classify it that way. But what was the second part you asked? What did you say?
I think it's just with young coaches coming in. What are the foundations they should lay in the beginning? Because first impressions last in relationships and coaching, etc. So what would your advice be there?
My advice, especially to young leaders, young coaches, is I feel that one of the biggest mistakes young leaders make is they think that they're supposed to know everything. And so then even if they don't know everything, then they pretend like they know. And, people can sniff out unauthenticity like nobody's business. So I feel the best way a young coach, a leader, can start developing trust is to model the behavior that you would like to see from the athletes whom you're coaching and your staff. And I think that was easy for me once I decided what type of a coach I wanted to be. It was easy for me to model that humility and vulnerability because I didn't know anything. I had to ask 100 questions a day about how to become a great gymnast. And so I think that young coaches should feel comfortable from day one lining their team up and saying, this is our long-term goal this year, obviously, to win out or win a national championship. Now let's put that behind us and let's talk about how we're going to go about doing that. Let's talk about the negotiables and not negotiables. And so then anytime you ask anybody for their opinion about something, they're going to have more buy-in to the process. And so 100% of the time, when I would ask our student athletes for their opinion about, okay, what should our goal be at the end of the year? Okay, how should we go about doing that? What are our non-negotiables with our team rules? What is accountability going to look like? How are we going to hold each other accountable? Let's talk about that let's agree to it all, and then let's start laying that foundation. And then to be able to say, if someone asks a question, or if one of the athletes says, well, how are we going to go about doing this? If you really don't know, don't pretend like you know. Just model the behavior that you would like to see from them and say, you know what? I honestly don't have an answer for that, but I'm going to go do some research and homework, and I'll get back to you.
I love that we've got onto standards there, because was this something that you did at the beginning of each season, was go through, so to say, your standards, your non-negotiables? Is that something that you would go through every season? Because obviously there would be new athletes that would come onto the team.
Yeah. We have, I think most colleges, I don't think it was just UCLA, but we had to produce a student-athlete handbook every year that had the rules and regs and accountability and what would happen if you show up late and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I went over that, and then I would have them sign it so they knew what they were getting into and what they were signing up for.
Was that for the whole athletics department, or was that just, did you have your individual ones for the gymnastics?
I had my individual one for gymnastics.
Right.
Every team, every head coach has to hand in their own student-athlete handbook.
Right.
So I had my own, but it was interesting. I remember years when there were some girls on the team that just couldn't seem to be on time. And being late is not okay. And being on time is being in the gym 10 minutes early. So chronic issues. And instead of me just lowering the hammer, I found that if I just huddled them up and just said, okay, guys, listen, we have an issue with people that are late. And we discussed at the beginning of the season why it's important to be on time. So I don't want to be the time police here. So what's the accountability going to look like? How are we going to motivate you and all your teammates to want to be on time? And they came up on their own with, okay, the next time somebody's late, the entire team has to climb the rope. Okay, let's do that. Next time somebody's late, the entire team has, because they came up with it, they were bought in. And then guess what? Nobody was late anymore.
Yeah, they talk about the difference between rules and standards. Rules are more a type of dictatorship kind of way of coming from the leader or the coach, as where standards are coming more from the actual team themselves, where it creates a higher accountability. You mentioned time management as one of your non-negotiables. Could you maybe name one or two other non-negotiables that you had when you were there?
Yes. So another non-negotiable, I'll give you one that seems rather frivolous and one that's extremely important, but they're both very important.
Cool, love it.
One, the frivolous one will be that I had a no gum rule. And people kind of make fun of me because they think that I'm just like so old school, no gum. But I can honestly say that everything that I instituted with our team, implemented, there was a reason behind it. And it wasn't because I didn't like gum. Because people go, oh, Miss Val hates gum. I'm like, no, actually, I really like to chew gum. But the reason why was because I felt that people in general, it's important that you know how you are presenting yourself in any situation. And so if you're going into a job interview, you shouldn't probably be chewing gum. If you're having an interview of any kind, whether it's in person or on film, you should not be chewing gum. You're not supposed to be chewing gum when you're competing. You shouldn't chew gum when you're doing gymnastics because you can actually choke on it. And so there are all these reasons why I gave them. And I showed them a video of Britney Spears in an interview just chomping away. And I was like, so this is fine. If she is fine with this, it's fine. I'm not judging Britney Spears. I just want to make sure that Britney Spears knows that she's chewing and chomping on gum. And so if I'm not here to micromanage your life. And if you have a job interview and you want to go into that job interview chewing gum and blowing bubbles and doing whatever else you do with it, that's fine. I just want you to know you're doing it. I want you to be aware of your actions.
Mm.
And so that was one non-negotiable. The other is just basically has to do with respect and how they spoke to each other and spoke to the coaches and spoke to themselves.
Mm. I like that.
We had a really good, we established as the years went on a really good team dynamic where the girls felt comfortable coaching each other up when they heard negativity coming out of one of their teammates' mouths about themselves, like, oh my God, I suck, or I suck today, or something like that. And then I would hear teammates say, whether you do or you don't, that mentality is not going to help you do better your next turn, and it's not going to help the team. Mm. And so I think you've probably experienced this, teams you've been on. Anytime the team takes accountability of themselves and each other, that's when the magic happens.
Exactly. 100% agree. They say good teams are led by coaches and great teams are led by the players. And, that's when you can have players that can call out each other or athletes that can call out each other, obviously in a respectful way. This is something I try and bring across. Right. I think what's very important is, and I'm sure you did this as well, Coach Val, was teaching them and giving students or athletes the tools of how to have hard conversations, of how you approach it, the timing, the tone that you use. I think those are very important lessons for us to pass on because, in life, you're going to have the hard conversations and the tough conversations. And the better you're able to handle them, the better outcome there's going to be. If I could ask you, actually staying on that, how did you go about the hard conversations, the tough conversations that had to be had?
First of all, I would always have them in my office, one-on-one in my office. So, or I would ask another assistant coach to be there, but it was always in a private setting, so they wouldn't be embarrassed. Second of all, when it's a hard conversation, then I would ask permission from them to tell them what I'm thinking. Mm. And, 100% of the time they go, yeah, sure, yeah, what's up? And once you get someone's permission, then they can't really get pissed off with you if you're telling them something they don't want to hear because, well, I asked permission. You said yes, But I think that kind of like gives a little prompt to the person that you're talking to that this is not going to be that easy of a conversation, but I hope that you understand that I do respect you and your opinion because I'm asking for your to be able to have this conversation with you and to ask the hard questions and to tell you what I'm observing. And it's I think words are so very important because I think the majority of the time our intentions get lost by other people's biases. And so, even as a coach, my goodness, I remember asking an athlete to, one of my athletes said she was getting an extra leg workout in because she wanted her tumbling to be more powerful. And then there was another athlete standing right next to her that needed to get stronger. And I said to her, why don't you join this first athlete in her leg workout so that we can, improve your tumbling. And she turned around, walked away, started crying, and told the team I said she was fat. And it's like, wow. No, I didn't say that. And more importantly, my intention wasn't about degrading you or making you feel badly. My intention was to help you get stronger. That's all my intention is. And my leadership coach says all the time to me, to us, and to our team that what people don't know about you, they will make up. And so I feel like you really can't over-communicate in situations like this.
I agree.
The more communication, the better.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I'm busy writing actually my next book on leadership and coaching, and I've mentioned there that you just can't over communicate enough, and 100% agree. It's great to hear that from someone like yourself. So I can't obviously go in this conversation without mentioning the legendary John Wooden. He was one of your mentors. Tell us a little bit about that relationship and maybe some of the takeaways you took from the incredible man. I'm sure there was many, but what were maybe
Yeah,
one or two things that you could share with us?
yeah, there were many. The one thing that really stood out to me, I remember early on in my relationship with Coach Wooden, is that I, okay, I'm going to talk about myself for a second. I, I grew up on stage. So when I would go into, especially a gymnastics meet, I remember being in the parking lot and getting ready to walk out of my car and going, okay, showtime, here we go. And like flip the switch to be on. And not that being on was bad, but I remember my husband saying to me, you have all this energy for all these people out when you're out being Miss Val, but then you come home and you just crash. Like you have no energy to even have a conversation. And I thought, well, that sucks. That's not very good. And then I remember I would take Coach Wooden. I'd take him to football games where I'm wheeling him into the Rose Bowl, and he's just getting mobbed by people.
Yeah.
Or I'm taking him to a speaking engagement where he's speaking at Staples Center in front of 15,000 people. Or I'm taking him to a little dinner with a donor or somewhere. He was always the same. And I don't know if he was like, I'm sure he was more fiery when he was a coach. And I've seen videos of him getting feisty coaching. But what I learned from being around Coach was he was never too high, he was never too low. He always used to tell his players that balance is like one of the most important words to have in life. And it didn't matter if he was speaking to the Queen of England or speaking to a 7-year-old girl. He was always the same. And from that, I gleaned to stop being on. It's not showtime. It's simply you doing your job. Go do your job. That's it. And
Did
that
you
was one thing.
Yeah, did you find that exhausting? You just mentioned there that I had to be on. I had to, showtime. Did you find that eventually
Yeah.
exhausting, and then you discovered, you know what?
Yeah.
Just, and one of the big words is obviously authenticity. Obviously, Coach Wooden
Yeah.
was authentic. That was him, like you said.
Yeah.
He was, I wouldn't say on all the time, but that was him. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and then the other thing was, now I'm thinking about that, was, okay, so me being authentic literally was actually me loosening up more. And when I started really being myself, I'm known for dancing. Whenever I hear music, our team is known for dancing whenever they hear music. And I allowed myself to dance and to dance with my girls on the sidelines and to just have fun during meets because that was me. That was authentic to me. We had won, I think it was like 2004. We just won our 5th championship, I think. We'd won 4 championships in 5 years. And the LA Times did an article on me and Coach Wooden. And the reporter said to me, he says, Miss Val, you're becoming another John Wooden. And before I could just like laugh out loud and say, no, that's blasphemy, Coach Wooden jumped in and he said, why would she want to be another Coach Wooden when she could be a great Valorie Kondos Field?
there you go.
And I remember feeling this weight lift from me, that I didn't have to be anything more than just who I am.
Mm. Well, that's great advice. I mean, authenticity is probably one of the most important traits of a great coach. Coach Val, what do you miss most about being at UCLA or being on the floor, so to say?
The relationships with the girls, yeah. and my coaching staff. I mean, we were really close for many decades. But I think if you ask any, well, you know what? I'm sure there are coaches out there that miss the games and miss the competing and miss all that. But it's the day in and day out little things that are relational that I miss. I miss being in the gym and one of the girls coming up to me with tears in her eyes and just saying, "Miss Val, I'm having a really rough day." And me being able to tell my assistant coaches, "Hey, I'm going to go upstairs for a second with so-and-so. I'll be right back." And taking her upstairs and making a cup of tea and just having a heart-to-heart about life. Those are the things that I miss.
Relationships. One thing I've always believed, that it's important to define success for your life and the success for your career. And for me, the older I've become, success for my life has basically come down to one word, and that's relationships. Is the importance of relationships. We maybe don't realize it in our 20s and our 30s, and then you start to realize it a little bit later. And then success in my career has been about freedom, in being able to work with who I love to work with, and being able to do what I love to do, for example. But if I could ask you, how do you define success?
Success for me is having big, bold, audacious goals in life and being really excited about those goals. And then at the end of the day, being able to have some one-on-one time with me and my God and go through my day and say, okay, A, was I a good human being? Was I honest? Was I respectful? Was I compassionate? Did I curb my temper? Did I curb my sarcasm? And B, did I get one little tiny step closer to my goals? And I'm one of these people that think, well, I'm going to be pursuing my artistic goals until the day I die. Like, I'm never going to stop, quote unquote, working, because I just love it. I love the challenge. I love everything about figuring life out and doing and finding your calling, finding my calling, and then pursuing that calling. And I don't think I'm ever going to not do that. But it takes discipline, it takes courage to be able to take a step toward your goals, because courage is taking that step without any guarantee of a result, and not knowing if you're good enough, not knowing if you're going to get left off the face of the planet, not knowing how anybody's going to respond to it. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to just take a deep breath and go, I did a good job today. Okay. I was a good friend. I was a good wife. I did a good job.
So what I can hear is two things here, and obviously I love you mentioned the word courage, because one of my favorite phrases at the moment is from Brené Brown, which is courage over comfort, and that pretty much sums it up. I'm sure you know some of Brené Brown's work as well. I think her book is Dare to Lead. But I'm hearing two things there. Obviously, you self-reflect at the end of each day, correct?
Yep.
And then, second of all, it sounds like you haven't retired. It sounds like you've transitioned.
Yes. I'm very honored to say one of my dear friends is Sherry Lansing, who ran Paramount Pictures and Fox for decades. And when I retired, she said, honey, you're not retiring. You're rewiring.
Love it.
You're taking everything that you've learned and you're rewiring into a new path. And I was like, got it. So,
excellent. Yeah. I want to ask you, and I asked most of my people I have on the podcast. Last week I had a 5-time Olympian in rowing, which is incredible. She's been at 5 Olympics. That's 21 years of rowing. But yeah, incredible. When I say the word pressure, what comes to your mind?
Oh gosh, I get really excited.
In competition.
I pressure. I think of diamonds. I think of pressure. I don't know, was it Billie Jean King that said pressure is a privilege?
Yep.
Uh, and I get very excited because that's when we grow. And all change is not growth. But in order to grow, you have to have change, and you've got to be that constant friction and pressure.
Mm. Next word, failure.
Failure is an F word that does not exist. Failure is, and I don't believe in the word failure, because anytime you don't achieve a goal, if you can step back and do some assessing of what worked, what didn't work, what I need to do differently next time to have a different result, then you've actually moved a little bit closer to achieving that goal. And if you've moved closer to achieving your goal, how can that be failure? It can't. So I think somebody made that word up to make us all feel badly about ourselves, and I think it should be taken out of our lexicon.
Mm. Now, actually, I've had 3 or 4 questions, and I don't want to leave all of them to the end because I don't want to run out of time. But one of the questions was from Cynthia in Perth, Australia, who asked, "How do you help athletes who are incredibly nervous before competing?"
Oh, yeah, great question. First of all, we talk a lot about, I remind them a lot that physiologically, your body goes through the same thing when it's nervous as it is when it's excited. So when you're nervous, your blood pumps faster, your mouth gets dry, your palms sweat a little bit, and your breathing gets short. You've got to take these deep breaths. And when you get excited, the same exact thing happens. Your blood starts pumping, your mouth gets dry, whatever. So first of all, let's relabel this. Don't ever allow yourself to label something negatively in your head. Like, I'm nervous, I'm stressed, I suck, whatever. Don't label it like that. Label it in a positive. I'm so excited. And second of all, then, is to remind them of their preparation. That you would not be allowed to compete on the competition floor, the routine that you're going to ask yourself to compete, if you hadn't properly prepared to be successful. So have confidence in your training, and understand that one bad turn, one bad skill is not indicative of how the rest of the day is going to go. And I would just say, go to your bank. If they've warmed up and they can't hit a backflip on beam to save their lives, and they look at me like, the whole day is going to be a miss, I'm like, okay, time out. Take a deep breath. How many of these have you done in your life successfully? Thousands. Great. Go to your bank. Go take one of those out. And just kind of talk to them. I do have to mention, and I've had a few athletes remind me of this. They have said that one of the most effective things that I ever said to them was, just get your head out of your butt. And it's like the proverbial cold water on your face. In fact, just yesterday, I had one of my alumni say to me, she says, I remember having the worst day, and you just saying, just get your head out of your butt. And she said, it was like a quit. And she says, I just started cracking up, and I realized I was making a big deal out of nothing. And she said, it literally changed my day.
All right, I'm going to definitely use that advice as well. Leading question, actually, that's great, because that leads on to another good question from Michael. Hi, Coach Val. Can you give an example of how one of your athletes fell into a bit of a slump, and share how you helped them get back to their best state of mind and performance? I thought that was quite a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's important in those situations to talk to the athlete about their why. Why are they doing it? Why do they want to keep doing it? Why, blah, blah, blah. And there were many times over the years that I had athletes say, I just don't like gymnastics anymore. I don't want to do gymnastics anymore. I was like, okay, so do you want to quit? No. Well, then we have to figure out your motivation, your why. What's going to be your why? And always the athletes would mention the camaraderie they had with teammates. I love my teammates. I love my team. And so then I would just talk to them about, okay, well, you know, as a healthy human being, you're going to work out anyway today. So why don't you just look at coming to the gym as your daily workout with people you really like to hang out with and focus more on the relationship side of it than the skills and the drills and all that. And just reformatting their motivation. Because I feel like we all wane at times with our passions and our motivations. So we need to restructure and we need to rethink our whys. Why am I still going to show up and do this?
Here's a great question as well. Sarah from Charleston. And I just want to say thanks so much to everybody who sent in the questions. There's definitely no chance I'm going to get through all these questions. But Coach Val, what did you look for in an athlete when scouting or recruiting? Maybe, you could name 2 or 3 things. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot.
First of all, I looked for competitiveness. Did they love to compete? Did they love the game? Or did they compete scared? And on that same level was whenever I went into the gym, I already knew what their gymnastics was like. I wasn't in there looking at their gymnastics. Obviously, they had to be, to sift through the hundreds of recruits, they have to have a certain level of skill. But once I sifted through all that, then it became their competitiveness and how did they treat their coaches, their fellow teammates, and how did they recover from making mistakes in the gym.
That's a good one.
The time between failure and recovery, how long was that time in the gym? Because were they going to be a drama queen and just like milk, they fall on beam and they're going to milk it for 20 minutes, or are they going to recover quickly? And I remember Nia Bennett, who's on the team right now, I recruited starting when she was 12 years old. And the one thing I remember from recruiting her was she was on vault and she had a teammate have a really bad fall on bars that was across the gym. And Nia looked over and then just ran across the gym, left her workout, left vault to go help a teammate. And help her dust off, help her, gave her a little pep talk, gave her a little fist bump, and then ran back to vault to continue with her own work. And I was like, okay, that's somebody I want on my team.
All about values and about the people you have as well. A funny one here. You'll probably recognize the name. Dan Kiernan from Spain says, "When are you coming to Spain, Coach Val?" I think you're on his podcast.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yes, Dan Kiernan. Dan Kiernan from Soto Academy.
Yes. Okay, Dan, let's do this. Come on. I want to do this. I've never been to Spain.
Oh, you're missing out.
I know.
You're missing out. The food is so good there. It's an amazing country as well. So, all right. So I'm going to be respectful of your time, Valorie. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I've just got a few more questions. Katerina says, as a gymnastic coach, this excites me in more ways than anyone can imagine. She is amazing. So you have a massive fan base. If there was one piece of advice she could give, what would it be and why? Now that's a pretty general question. So anything.
I will answer it. Yeah. The one piece of advice is that life is about choice, and the choices that we make in life dictate the life we live. And when you really embrace the fact that everything you do in life is your personal choice, and when you realize, I'll speak for myself, when I realized that my thought, I can choose my thought, and my thoughts dictate my emotions, and my emotions dictate my actions. So every single action I have is going to have numerous repercussions that's going to determine the type of life I live, the type of relationships I have. Well, all of those actions start with the discipline that I have with my own mind and my own thoughts. And it was really, really cool for me to see, and I should have done a research project with all of this, but it literally was it took a year and a half. It was like halfway through the student athlete's sophomore years where they really just that clicked. And once it clicks that you can determine your thoughts, which will then determine your actions, which then will then determine the repercussions, if you can no longer be a victim in life. You can't say it wasn't your fault. You can't say I got a poor grade because the teacher hates me. You can't say, you take ownership. When you take ownership of your thoughts, then you take ownership of your life. And that was one of the coolest times and memories for me with these student athletes halfway through their sophomore year going, you know that life is about choice thing? I get it.
No, that's great advice, and that really is true. I mean, that's not just great advice for adults, but kids as well and students as well. Is that life is a choice, as you said. I mean, I was just listening back to you talking about what you looked for in recruiting. It sounded like it all came down to attitude, because your skills are the entry ticket, but your attitude determines how far you're going to go. And attitude can cover everything, right? It can cover your mindset. It can cover your like you said, your ability to overcome adversity, for example. So many things. So awesome. Last two or three questions. If there's anything,
well,
sorry.
Stay with those questions. But when you're talking about attitude, and you asked me about Coach Wooden earlier, it took him 15 years to write his Pyramid of Success. He wrote the Pyramid of Success not for athletes. He wrote it for parents, to give them a blueprint of how to help their children and not put too much stress on them. But when you look at the cornerstones of the Pyramid of Success, the cornerstones are industriousness and enthusiasm. And so I absolutely believe that every single thing that I do in life, I bring a good work ethic and I bring enthusiasm to the project. I tell people all the time, if you're showing up for a job and you don't know if you're going to get passed over or whatever, just show up with a great work ethic and a great enthusiasm, and you will set yourself far and above everybody else that's working there. Yeah. So, okay, I just wanted to say that.
Love it. No, excellent, great advice. That's amazing. I never knew that the Pyramid of Success was designed for actually parents. I always thought that was around athletics. So, wow. Okay, no. Wow. I never knew that. That's incredibly interesting. I don't like to use the word regrets, but if there's anything you could go back and do over again, would there be anything?
Oh, wow. I would establish, okay, so, I was a head coach for 29 years, so that's a pretty long time. And obviously my coaching style changed and all that. But I'm going to say like the last, I don't know how many years of my career, but I did a really good job of providing a safe space for the student athletes to come tell me whatever they wanted to tell me. And we talked a lot, like part of our non-negotiables that I talked about at the beginning with the student athlete handbook was that I wanted them to know they could say anything to anyone as long as it was honest and respectful. And if you're not being totally honest with someone, you're not being respectful, because basically you're saying to that person, I can't be totally honest with you because you can't handle it. And that's not being respectful. So I think I did a good job of providing that safe space where they could come to me in my office and respectfully tell me why they're upset with me, why they think what I'm doing is wrong, or whatever else they want to say. And if I had a regret, it was I didn't figure that out until, like, I don't know, the last 10 years of my career or so.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah, and it takes, I say this in my TED Talk, and it's so true, that the number one ingredient for relationships is trust. And it takes a long time to develop trust. And it takes a very short time to break the trust.
Yep.
So, but if coaches would put in the time to develop the trust with the athlete, that the athlete knows you care more about them as a human being than you do as an athlete. Like, I care more about their mental, emotional, and physical well-being than I do, are we going to win a national championship? That when you take the time to develop that trust with them, it pays off in dividends. It just, I mean, it literally, they will go to battle for you. I've had a few athletes tell me that it was when I talked to them as a normal human being that they made this definite decision in their lives that they would champion me their entire career at UCLA.
Going on to your TED Talk, obviously I've watched it multiple times, and you know, it's probably one of my favorite TED Talks, together with Rita Pearson, who talks about that kids won't learn from people they don't like. I love that one, and she was obviously coming from the education. Have you seen that one?
No, what's his first name?
Her name is Rita Pearson, and
okay.
Yeah, if you just she's from the educational sector, of course, and she says that kids don't learn from people they don't like, and I just love that. It's absolutely 100%. No matter how much you know or how much experience you have, they still won't learn from you if they don't like you. So, talking about your TED Talk, and it's titled "Why Winning Doesn't Always Equal Success," and obviously I've seen that, but you know, I recommend every single person to watch that TED Talk. Just quickly. Just briefly explain to us what you mean by that, why winning doesn't mean success, because obviously you were in such a competitive environment. I mean, you were at the very top of college athletics. Doesn't winning matter at that level?
It does. Yes, it does. Winning matters, and so does success.
Yep.
But the follow-up question is, can you win? Can you be at your best? Can you train champions? Can you train excellence without compromising the human spirit? So that's the question. And you know, growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, coaching wasn't like that. You know, we didn't talk about those things in coaching. And now I think we're all on the same page. We all understand that real change never happens without education. And so we have been educated, and we've learned how the human psyche works. We've learned that somebody will go to battle for you, and somebody will lay their life on the table for you if they believe that you care about them. And those things, like you mentioned, Brene Brown, who's, you know, I taught a class last quarter on transformational coaching, and I used her book as like the thread through the whole quarter. And every person in this class, in the graduate class, every student in the class either was a fifth-year athlete or a graduate assistant coach. So they'd grown up playing sport. And I think there were like 18 guys in the class and 2 girls. And when we got through with the class, I asked them for some feedback of what was good, what wasn't good, what they learned, blah, blah, blah. Every single one of them said, I never thought of vulnerability as a strength. I never thought of compassion in coaching as a strength.
Yep.
And I think we're really living in a really cool era right now where those are the buzzwords. Those are the key words. When you look at the strongest, the best leaders, they just have this ability to, this calm confidence about them to lead from a place of strength and not ego.
Yeah, 100% agree. And believe me, that could be another podcast that we could go into about vulnerability, because that's just a massive area today, like you said, that where coaching has changed and where athletes are learning how to be more open and more vulnerable, which is so important. So
especially boys, because
yep.
you know we train vulnerability and compassion. We coach it out of them from a young age. We don't coach it in them. Like when we say, come on, man up, we're not saying be more vulnerable and more humble.
You know, it's so funny you should mention that. I'm not going to mention any names here, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a gentleman, I think he was a journalist, and he was writing, I think he was a rugby journalist, and he said, what is this nonsense with athletes crying and hugging and this? He says, come on, man up. And the response was incredible. I would say 98% gave this guy a very, very tough time. As in saying, listen, dude, you're living in the wrong era.
Right. Right. But I think it's really important to illuminate the fact that we're able to talk about this right now because we have been educated. This isn't just like another spiritual philosophy that we're going to just throw by in this era that we're in, and then we'll come up with something new in the next 10 years. This is coming from research and education.
Yeah.
It's coming from that all of the young athletes that are you've seen my TED Talk, but it's true that the reports of depression, stress, anxiety, suicide that are skyrocketing, that's not on kids, that's on us.
Yep, as humans. Yep. No, I mean,
that's
I agree.
On us. It's putting the pressure on them. That's on parents, as coaches, putting pressure on our kids. And that's why I feel it's so important to bring the kids into the conversation, the athletes into the conversation about what does success look like for you. I remember I had an athlete, she came in, she was a tremendous academic student, and she came to UCLA and barely passed her classes. And I went ballistic. I was like, this is ridiculous, blah, 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 what are you here for, all that stuff. And she just looked at me and she said, Miss Val, you know what? I did not enjoy high school at all because all I did was gym and study. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm going to go in some type of, probably going to graduate in sociology or something like that. And she says, I want to enjoy my time at UCLA. So as long as I pass my classes, I will consider that successful. And I was just shocked. First of all, I thought that was so cool that she knew what success meant to her, that she could enumerate it for me, someone who was on her case about the C's and D's she was getting. And she was like, no. Basically she was saying, your definition of success, don't put that on me. You haven't even asked me what my definition of success for myself is. I was like, okay, I like that.
Yeah. That is, talk about courage and talk about clarity.
Yes, absolutely. That was really good. Yeah, I'm going to remember that.
There we go. Coach Val, this has been amazing. I mean, I could obviously keep you on here for another hour, but I know your time is very, very precious. You also have a book, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. Where is that available? Is that Amazon?
It's Amazon or my website. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to tell you something else. Okay. Sounds good. On my website, officialmissval.com, you can buy my book. You can also buy my swag, my sweatshirt, t-shirts, masks, socks. It's really, really great material. They're really well made, but the best part about it all is all of the profits, every dime of the profits go to help a ranch in outside of Austin that is a community that rescues girls from sex trafficking.
Wow.
It's called The Refuge. And so for any of your holiday needs, I don't know when this is airing or not, but if you go to my website, if you're going to buy my book, buy it there, because then the proceeds will go to...
I'm on it right now. And I'm looking at that swag. It looks pretty cool. You got pink, you got your grays, you got some amazing colors. Love it.
It's really cool, and it's really cool material. Like, I didn't design it, so I can say that. They're really nicely made. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with is my book is entitled Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. And when so the last few years that I was with Coach Wooden, he lived to be 99 years old in 9 months. The last few years I was with him, every single time I was with him, somebody would ask him, Coach, do you have any regrets? You've lived an impeccable life, but do you have any regrets? And he always answered with the same thing. And he says, my wife, Nellie, she passed away 30 years ago, and she loved to dance. And he said, I've never been a good dancer, and I was always very, very shy. So I never danced with my wife. And I realize now, if I had danced with my wife, people wouldn't have made fun of me. They would have seen a couple deeply in love dancing. So if I have one regret, I would dance with my wife. So the title of the book is an homage to Coach Wooden, Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance.
Gosh, that's an amazing way to finish. Coach Val, thank you so much. If people want to follow you, what are the best social media platforms?
You know what? It's really my website. Okay. I have gone off of social media since April or so.
Okay.
I'm taking a break from social media. So
good for you.
Really my website. It is so liberating. I can't tell you how much more work I'm getting done. I'm reading more. I'm playing my piano more. I've just come up with all this time. I'm living it.
Well, I can hear
Thank
it.
You.
Just listening to your voice is just so much joy. I mean, you just have such an abundance of energy and joy. So I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for coming on. I know this is going to be a very, very well received episode. And as you mentioned, officialmissval.com. Get over there, check out her book, and check out her amazing swag gear. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening as well. I appreciate this. Bye-bye.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed that one with Miss Val as much as I did. What an incredible woman. I learned so much, and I've actually listened to this episode probably 2 or 3 times and taken notes from it because, sometimes when you're recording live, it's hard to really take in everything, but what an amazing woman. So much experience. Of course, someone that was mentored by the one and only Coach Wooden, and a 36-year successful coaching career. Remember that this podcast is available on iTunes, on Amazon Podcasts, on YouTube, and via my website, alistairmccaw.com. And of course, thank you so much to all of you who have left a review and rating. Connect with me on social media, on Twitter at Alistair McCaw, Instagram Be Champion Minded, and on Facebook, Alistair McCaw page. Until next time, remember you were made for greatness. Now go do the work. Stay champion minded.